Good evening, all. Uh, Thanks, Precise Management team and Enhance and Excel for giving me this opportunity talk to aspirant energy auditors. I mean, to give you a small background of what I am. It's there already on the screen. I am a 1981 electrical engineering graduate, and I did my BE certification in 2009. So around 11 years before, and I'm a BVQI certified lead auditor for ISO 50000 also. Presently, I am executive director in a company called SAS PowerTech Private Limited. We are into energy audits and various kind of electrical audits. We also have some licenses for some electrical system simulation software. And on social front, I represent Electrical Consultants Association of Maharashtra as honorary secretary. This is just a small background. My professional background is I started my career in 81. Initial 3-4 years I was working for a cement plant erection commissioning company. Then I worked for a power electronics company, and then about 20 years after that I had my own business. And now also I am running my own business as energy auditing firm, and as electrical auditing also. This is my rough background. Today's webinar, we will focus mainly on BE exam. I'll just try to share some of my experiences because I gave this exam at the age of 50. I mean, I was 50 years old when I gave this exam. That was around, you can say, almost 25 years after my graduation. And in between, there was hardly any exposure to academics. And then later part we'll see practicing energy audit. I mean, these are the two main topics I'll try to highlight and share my experiences with you. Energy auditing, to tell you frankly, after working in it for about 12 years, it's a very interesting cross-disciplinary field. I mean, although I am an electrical engineer, I these days enjoy auditing pumps and auditing chillers and auditing boilers and all that. So as an electrical engineer, or as electrical engineering rather, we supply electrical energy to various equipment which consume energy, and the equipment are all either driven mechanical or thermal or HVAC and things like that. So it's a very interesting field. Every day you get something, you do something new, you come across new facilities. Like, I mean, a day I audit a hospital, or tomorrow I may audit a hotel, or a day after tomorrow I may audit an engineering company, IT company, pharmaceutical company. So if you are interested in enlarging your canvas about industrial experiences, this is a very nice field, because every day you come across something else. If you are, of course, focusing only on energy auditing, if you are working in a particular company, and then if you opt for this, again, you can have cross disciplinary exposure for improving energy performance of your organizations. So nonetheless, whatever you do, it is quite an interesting field. That's what my opinion is. One of the major forms of energy consumed is electrical energy. We all know this. However, the energy guzzlers are mechanical equipment like compressors, fans, blowers, pumps, etc. Thermal utilities include boilers, thermic fluid heaters, hot water generators, hot air generators, etc. Practicing energy uh, auditing requires very clear understanding of the basic fundamental principles on which these equipment work. So in engineering education, we always talk about fundas, right? So all these fundas are very much required as far as energy auditing is concerned. So
वेबिनार सुरू आहे ग
practicing
वेबिनार
energy
सुरू आहे
auditing requires very clear understanding of basic fundamental principles on which above
तू
equipment
काढ ना
work,
बसाय
and their
आवाज
energy
येणार
performance. This is also equally important. How they work
अगं
and how they can work.
पडत होतो ना आपण तशीच का
Can
कर
can
कर
can somebody whose mic is on mute it, please? We are getting disturbance, background disturbance. Thank you. Uh, Habit of out of box thinking is also required if you are an energy auditor, because energy auditing is not
अरे यार
commercial audits where hello, can the mic be muted, please? And I am hearing a lot of background noise. Thank you. Another thing is system engineering approach is very much necessary as far as energy auditing is concerned. By system engineering, what I mean is the entire system needs to be considered as a block, and then energy efficiency has to be analyzed. A small example is an energy efficient motor connected to an energy efficient pump may not necessarily form an energy efficient pumping system, because you might operate that pump way out from its best efficiency point. If that happens in the design, then if, both the equipment, although they are energy efficient, the total system will not be energy efficient. Always you have to think about the entire system which you are connected with or which you are trying to audit. So this approach needs to be developed. Vast field experience is a must, because one has to continuously update on sales about new energy efficient technologies, because every day you go to, I mean, my next point is very vital in this connection. Client looks at you as a mentor, guide, or a philosopher. He doesn't look at you as a designer or a consultant or a contractor when you go and do energy auditing. So you have to keep yourself updated always about the field in which you are working, and newer energy efficient technologies, at least you should know them, you should know their sources. All that is required. Very strong belief in measurements is a must. I mean, no thumb rule. Any thumb rule, if you apply while doing energy auditing, you may drastically go wrong, or you may land up giving, cutthroat estimates where paybacks and other things can definitely affect. So measurements and looking at primary documents is required. I mean, nobody should tell you that this is my Excel sheet of electrical bill. You should physically see those bills and then believe that data, so that it is and your outcome becomes more authentic. So you have to strongly believe in measurements and first level documents. Knowledge of indicative pricing of various industrial equipments is also a must. I mean, whenever you suggest or suspect a loss of energy, and you mention about modifications in the system, obviously the client is going to ask you what would be the investment required. So at least budgetary pricing of various equipments should be, you should know. I mean, that's the reason I say that vast field experience is required. uh, because most of the time you have to convince right from designer to the operator. I mean, any modification if you try to do in a particular equipment, then the operator also needs to be convinced that the machine will work the way the company wants it for production. Because one thing always energy auditor has to remember, that organizations are not run for saving energy, they are run for manufacturing something, they are run for offering some services. So that is a prime objective of any organization, and that has to happen with energy efficiency. So anytime if you suggest something through your analysis, and if the operator says no sir, this equipment will not work this way, then you should have skill as well as capability to convince the operator as well. Designer probably must be an engineer, so it will be slightly easier to convince a designer, but operator also has to be convinced. So field experience, hands-on field experience is also plays a very important role. Now let us see some small tips about this exam. Exam is organized by National Productivity Council. I mean, why I have mentioned this, because there are typical patterns in the papers. I mean, question papers. There is no innovation, nothing. I mean, they just keep on repeating it. So when we had done, we had undergone all this, we had literally taken out about 10 years papers, or we gave it in 2009. So there were only 5 years papers were available. 2004, I think, was the first batch when they got certified. So all 5 years papers we took, and we had just made a Excel sheet. I mean, on which topic, how many, I mean, in which year the question was asked, and that really helped us. I mean, this is a trick. Most of the time you will find that the questions will be word by word same, with only change in numbers in numericals. So that's how you can attack it. Past experience shows most questions and numericals are repeated. Worth attempting last 5 years question papers during preparation. I mean, you can just take up last 5 years question papers and attempt them, so that your preparation will be much better. Practicing quick scientific calculations. Many of you might be practicing engineers now who have left, design and actual calculations. And that's what I felt when I did it, because before that I was running my own business, and commercial and business running activities were more than actual design calculations. So even believing in calculator is at times a challenge if you have not touched it for last 3-4 years. So quick scientific calculations you must do confidently for attempting this examination. Another quick tip is 150 marks papers in 3 hours. According to me, this is ridiculous. I mean, after giving this examination, I had written a long letter to their director that nobody is going to, ask us to save energy at the tip of a gun. So this is ridiculous. They should not ask this, but nevertheless, that is the way they take that exam. So what we did was we decided that we will attempt only 100 or 125 marks to first ensure or oblique secure 75 marks, which is a passing requirement. Once you are through with this exam, as a practicing auditor, nobody is going to ask you how much you had scored in that exam, right? So after that, you have plenty of time to even master, so many techniques which you might not find time to, during preparation of the exam. So this is also another thing. 40 marks MCQ is what the format says. But if you go through those MCQs, you will find that many of the MCQs actually need calculations to select the answer. They are not just obvious. So if you look at that, then my suggestion would be go through the entire paper. You might find some theory questions which are comparatively easy. You know about them and you can secure those marks. So you can do that first and then maybe attempt slightly difficult MCQs where some calculations are required. If you can guess them well, if you are prepared well, then go for it. They always tell aspirants that out of 150 marks, 40 marks is MCQs, so 3 hours are enough. But if you go through those MCQs, you will find that a lot of calculations are required to arrive at correct answer. Electrical engineering related weightage is hardly 10% in the total syllabus as well as actual exam. So those of you who are electrical engineers and trying to give this exam should work very hard on mechanical things, because ultimately 90% of the paper is related to mechanical engineering. It's not related to electrical engineering at all. So that much care one has to take. Mechanical calculations involve lot of conversion of units. I mean, as a joke, when I talk to my mechanical colleagues who assist me or other who do energy auditing with me, I keep telling them always that why you express pressure in hundreds of units. I mean, somebody talks about water column, somebody talks about kg per cm square, and so many things. I mean, and the BE examination body is very fond of this. I mean, the questions they will ask in one unit and answers they want in some another unit. So this conversion is a task, and typically if you are a non-mechanical engineer, then you are not used to it. So give some specific attention to that. That quick unit conversion could be required for clearing the examination. Whatever you are going to see later on, Enhance on Excel and Precise Management both are bringing some e-learning course to you for preparation of this exam. And probably if you go through that course, you will like this energy auditing very much, because so many contents, although they are parallel to syllabus of BE, they are related to practical things. I mean, just last February, a year back, we audited a company in Malaysia through my company, and the energy consumption of that company was in Indian rupee terms worth around 1 crore per day. They were consuming about 300 crores energy in a year, thermal plus electrical. So such amazing things you will see in that course, and which will probably motivate you more for exam as well as whatever you come across later on after becoming an energy auditor. So these are some small tips about examination and how you go about it. Concentrate more on mechanical things. If you cannot become master of solving problems in compressors and fans and blowers and boilers. Maybe you can concentrate on few of them, and I expect that the same questions will appear there. Mostly they'll appear because these are 4 5 areas where they keep on asking questions, and you will be able to attack them well, because there are systematic engineering calculations involved in analyzing energy efficiency of all of them. See, fundamentally, why this course and overall energy auditing concentrates more on mechanical equipment, because almost all mechanical equipment have a very narrow best efficiency band during their operation. I mean, if you take a pump for a typical head and flow, maybe 20% less and 20% more, it will give you best efficiency. That doesn't happen with electrical equipments. I mean, a worst case no load efficiency, or from 10% to 100% load on a transformer, its efficiency may vary from 95% to 98%. It will never go down to 10% or 12%. In my career, I have audited 500 kilowatt pumps which are working at 23% efficiency. They were consuming full power, but they were delivering only 70% output, because they were not operating at their best, within their best efficiency zones. So there you actually get huge opportunities to recommend to your clients, or things like that. So mechanical equipments are really important as far as energy saving is concerned, and the whole course is designed around it. And as a practicing engineer also, ultimately you have to go through those for doing actual energy auditing and recommending changes for achieving better efficiencies. So that is required. As a freelance or as a company, if you want to go for energy auditing later on, to tell you frankly, if you are a good team, a fairly experienced team in your basics, I mean, compressor or pump or a blower is same for any industry. I mean, you should be able to differentiate between a process equipment and a utility equipment, which will come to them later on. Then savings, calculating savings and through measurements is always possible. As an energy auditing firm or as an individual person, if you really want to make career into it as a freelance person, then around 50 lakhs worth investment is required in measuring instruments. Because as I had told on the last before few slides, that you have to believe in measurements. So unless and until you measure, you cannot control. That's a truth. So you have to invest a lot in measuring instruments. Then yearly calibration of these instruments is also cost will be around 50,000 rupees, because all the equipment which you use for auditing, they have to be calibrated every year, because unless their readings are correct, your conclusions also will not be correct if the equipment do not measure correctly. Then qualified and experienced trained manpower is also required. So that is also another investment. Experts from electrical, thermal, mechanical engineering. My career, what I have done is, I am basically electrical engineer, although I can talk on mechanical subjects to some extent as of now, because of the experience through which I have gone. But still, even for a chiller, I make a mechanical expert to stand in front of it, because it's his everyday affair for him. So he can find lacunas earlier, he can recommend practical solutions, and he can also vouch for the recommendations for getting resultant energy saving. So in my team, even within thermal, we have separate experts for boilers, we have separate experts for thermic fluid heaters, so who have experience in that field. That's how our recommendations become more faithful, and by word of mouth we get around 50% business of what we are getting right now. Expertise oblique skill, including interpersonal, to convince operator and designer. See, separate interpersonal skills are required to convince operator, and separate skills are required to convince a designer. So those skills one has to have. Otherwise, whenever an energy auditor enters a shop floor, normally people feel that you are there for picking up their mistakes, whereas you have to develop that confidence first, that you have not designed this plant, somebody else has designed. So let us work together for saving energy and increasing profits. Ultimately, energy is saved fundamentally for increasing profits. Nobody, I mean, 10% of the aim of energy audit is energy audit and energy saving is for social causes. Basically, if you increase your profits by saving energy, all other social causes will obviously follow. I mean, CO2 emission is not going to increase if you reduce energy consumption, but energy consumption is going to give you profits also, increase your profits also. So which companies are interested in getting energy audits done? Those for whom cost of energy is substantial part of their indirect expenses. Now, this direct expenses, indirect expenses, profit and loss account, balance sheets, to this extent, an energy auditor should know commercial part of business, because you should know. I mean, generally, my first presentation in an opening meeting, wherever we start audit, will include a latest balance sheet of that company and latest profit and loss account of that company, either shared by them or I try to collect it from their websites. If it's a public limited company, 3 financial reports are always available. So they feel that you are deeply concerned about increasing their profits. So indirect expenses, if the cost of energy is more, then it is possible. A small example which I can give you is for cement and steel industry, cost of energy is about 35 to 45% of their cost of production. So even at times in steel industry, cost of energy is more than cost of raw material. So any saving in that obviously increases their profit. So something similar happens with cement industry also. So if you go and have a look at cement industries, most of the cement industries in India, you will find that they have captive power plants. They don't want to buy power from outside, basically because it saves money for them and increases their profit. Product is sold in very competitive market. Even there, now if you take case of two-wheelers, typically two-wheeler part manufacturers, it's a very competitive market. Piece rate, they get 5% or 6% margins. So if you save their energy, obviously it is advantageous to them. There is a pressure to reduce carbon footprint as per corporate policy. Now this is, as of now, slightly rare in India, but a lot of European and American companies keep this as a yearly target, and that drives. I mean, because of the corporate policy, they have been allotted some budget to be spent on energy saving. So those are the companies where you get. To give you a small example, if anybody is from Pune in this webinar, they must be knowing about Sandvik. Sandvik Asia is a company who has even today monopoly on tools. I mean, manufacturing, not tools, tool inserts, and there is very specialized field in which they work, and their margins are very high. But still, as a Sandvik, as a multinational group, they have some carbon footprint reduction targets. So every 2 years, their team gets a budget for energy auditing. I mean, twice we have done it for them so far, and every time we see that at least 60-70% of the recommendations they implement, because there is a pressure for reduction of carbon footprint. Social considerations of top management, this is also one of the drivers. People feel that climate should be good. Now, since Biden has come, you can see that on TV that US is also now advocating climate. I mean, improving climate changes and all that. So some social considerations of top management also drive energy audits, and statutory requirements. In India, we'll come to that slide later on. What are the statutory requirements? Who has to undergo energy audit as a by law, and all that. That will come to later on. So these are some of the drivers. Other opportunities for energy auditors: if you become energy auditor, more responsibilities in design engineering. If you are in design of anything, I mean any engineering equipment, as an employee or as a freelancer, you get more responsibilities, because the equipment which you are manufacturing, if it consumes less energy in operation, then OPEX becomes less, and the cycle cost of that equipment to your customer becomes less, and then he'll be more motivated to buy your equipment. So that is an opportunity which you can get if you undergo this cross-disciplinary course. ISO 50001 implementation. This is also another opportunity. This is an energy management and control standard, which is recently I mean, not exactly recently. It is now even 50,001 series is also quite old, but this is also another ISO standard which teaches you how systematically you can save energy. So implementation of that, you can get involved in your company or as an external consultant if you become an energy auditor. Cost optimization in manufacturing. If you are a manufacturing engineer or if you are a production engineer, maybe if you undergo this course, you can suggest your management that we are wasting energy here. It can be, utilized in a better way. So you get some more feather in your cap when you are working. Lead in facility management. If you are facility management is a very common concept now. All large commercial establishments give their facility for to be managed by some other companies, and these facility management companies these days are fighting amongst each other. I mean, if there are if it's a, let's say, a big setup of Infosys or TCS with around accommodating around 4 or 5,000 employees today, a facility management company is managing that facility. B goes there and tells them that we'll manage your facility in so much of energy, so that will be your direct saving, please give that work to us. So even in that area, there is a lot of scope for energy auditors now. Green building design and consultancy. These also, I mean, slightly more training you will have to undergo once you become energy auditor. But you at least can, anticipate, digest, and look at it in a very innovative way if you are an energy auditor in case of green buildings. PAT audits under Energy Conservation Act for designated consumers. See, in India, Energy Conservation Act 2001, when it was formed, Government of India came out with Bureau of Energy Efficiency as a part of that law. And equally, after that was in place, Bureau of Energy Efficiency came out with around, I think now the number is around 800 different establishments in India, and about 8 to 9 different sectors who are energy guzzlers. So they are directly, governed by this Energy Conservation Act. For them, audits are compulsory. For them, specific energy consumptions are decided. They have targets to achieve that, and if they don't achieve, they have to pay a certain penalty. So perform, achieve, and trade is what is long form of PAT. So these are the audits which government enforces on these organizations, and there will be tenders and all where you can get into it and do whatever those kind of audits. Employment as an energy auditor with designated consumers, that is also possible. Employment with multinational KPOs who handle online energy consultancy. Now, this is a slightly new thing which is coming up in India now. There are some multinational companies who manage some establishments outside India, and energy auditors or energy engineers, let us call, sit here. They get this online data of, let's say, a chiller or a boiler or something like that, and sitting here, they advise the operator to operate that equipment in a very energy efficient way. One of the examples is Pune has such a KPO. I mean, I can, let's not take the name, but they have about 60 70 engineers with them, which do this exercise in all 3 shifts. I mean, they are supposed to give the operator some SOPs or some operating instructions for next shift, so that at the end of the shift he will operate that facility in so much of energy, and they give those instructions based on whatever data, online data is collected in the shift in which they are present on the computer. So it's a kind of online KPO activity where energy auditor can get employment. I won't advise freelance energy auditing, basically because it's a multidisciplinary task, as I am trying to explain so far, and it requires organizational support. I mean, in running industries these days, getting shutdowns for these kind of activities is comparatively very, very rare. So you have to dance according to what your client wants. At times we do take measurements from maybe 11 o'clock in the night to 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, such things are required. So individual, for a single person, it becomes very difficult to attack such projects. So if you are a team, obviously you can give better results. If you are a team, if you are a company, if you form a group, obviously there are certain drawbacks, in the sense you will have some break-even points, so much you have to earn. I mean, typically running a business, whatever. Now in my team, we are about 20 engineers, and we have added, we being basically electrical engineers, we have added a lot of electrical audits also to it. So the same team approaches energy audit, the same team works for electrical also. And ultimately, after 11 years now, for past 5 years, I would say that we are able to occupy ourselves for about 200 days, 250 days in a year, which are available with you as a, I mean, that much occupancy is now possible, but after slogging for almost 5-6 years. And if you really earn reputation in this, there are good payments are available. I mean, a 5 megawatt total energy, thermal plus electrical, if you really audit and if you have a reputation of giving good results, you get around somewhere between 15 to 20 lakhs for that audit, and you can complete that audit in about 2 to 3 months time in total audit part, not execution. Execution will depend upon clients basic priorities. So such kind of returns are possible, but advice through my experience so far is try to attack it as a company rather than attacking only as an individual, because a lot of equipment you have to connect and carry, and you need people. It's not that it is a single man's affair. Now let us go to in physical energy audit. I mean, I always say this, that law of conservation of energy can neither be created nor destroyed. The total energy in the world remains constant, is what everybody says as an engineer, as a scientist and all that. Then why save energy? What is the advantage of saving energy? Fundamentally, the energy saving reduces cost of production, which we have seen. I mean, as an engineer, we should understand that all engineering activities in the world are basically performed to earn money. I mean, the rest all follows, but no organization is run for social reasons. So you can reduce cost of production, increase your margins. Second is primary energy deposits are limited. I mean, at least as far as the knowledge which we have today, coal and oil and all these are primary energies. They have limited deposits. So one day or the other, they are going to exhaust. So better we save them. Primary energy sources like coal, fossil fuel, natural gas, heat, sunlight, water storage at a higher level cannot be used to do the work directly. I mean, you cannot keep coal in front of water and the water gets heated. You have to burn the coal. So burning has efficiency. Something similar happens with all other fuels which I have shown in this slide. So sunlight, if you have there, it doesn't heat the water directly. You have to have a collection system. Again, it will have efficiency. So increasing efficiency of these converting devices is required. That's why, although the total energy remains constant, you have to really work hard to save the energy. Another basic reason is primary energy forms have to be converted to secondary energy forms like electricity, steam, compressed air, chilled water. These are the forms in which you actually use the energy. So again, conversion equipment has efficiency. They can work inefficiently. You have cars which go for 4 kilometers per liter, and you have cars which go 15 kilometers per liter as well. So that's what one of the reasons for which you have to again save energy. So these are fundamental reasons why you have to save energy. See, global warming, sustainability, climate change, all is getting discussed throughout the world. But energy saving will automatically offer positive contribution and towards betterment of mankind while addressing above issues. Plus, will increase profits. So all these top parameter things which I have discussed here, global warming, sustainability, they are required. But if you save energy, they will automatically follow. It's not that if you save energy, they will not follow. So you can attack both if you save energy. Some basic concepts, terminologies about industrial energy auditing. Specific energy consumption for total output for intermediate stages. Specific energy consumption is energy consumption per unit of something. Suppose you are generating chilled water, then you can talk about kW per TR. TR is a unit for air conditioning. something similar to that. So all everywhere, suppose you are manufacturing a part of a two-wheeler, then energy consumption per part of the two-wheeler becomes specific energy consumption. So you can calculate it, try to optimize it. That's all comes under energy auditing and following energy auditing practices. Fixed and variable energy, this is also another term. Suppose you have a chilled water air conditioner or a air conditioner for your room. The air conditioner doesn't stop unless you put it off or you have some other automatic arrangement, even if nobody is there in the room. So that energy becomes a kind of fixed energy. But if you are inside, if you are, let's say, there are 10 people who are working on computers, the moment they go out, they will shut off their computers. So that becomes a variable energy. Fixed and variable energy also you should be able to differentiate as an energy auditor. Equipment performance parameters depending upon technology, age, level of maintenance. So this is also, equipment performance parameters are also important. Like as I said, kW per TR for chiller, kW per CFM for compressors. So there are benchmarks. There are benchmarks available in the industry. Good companies keep telling you that my product is going to consume so much for developing 1 TR of air conditioning. So that can be taken as a reference and the equipment can be analyzed which comes in front of you. Utility equipment, process equipment. We in next few slides we'll see that fundamentally energy auditor is not a process expert always. I will say always. I mean, he could be expert in some of the processes, but he need not be. He will never be expert in all the processes. So a compressor is a compressor in any industry. If you go to pharmaceutical industry, if you go to engineering industry, if you go to hospitals and all, compressor is a compressor, boiler is a boiler. So those kind of equipment are categorized into utility equipment, and process equipment will be something like, let's say in case of hospital, a MRI machine is a process equipment. In case of uh, injection molding, your injection molding machine is a process equipment, but the chiller which feeds chilled water to that machine for cooling the dye is a utility equipment. So you should be able to differentiate between these two. And as an energy auditor, your first focus could be on utility equipment and second focus could be on process equipment, because affecting, rather giving suggestions in process equipment can affect production quality, production volume and all that. So energy auditor should always will always keep less priorities on process equipment and more priorities on utility equipment for analyzing and recommending energy saving measures. Demand analysis and design qualifications. By demand analysis, I don't mean electrical engineering here. Those who are electrical might feel that this demand is electrical. Not that way. This demand is any demand. Suppose a process needs hot water, then some process designer should tell me that I want so much of quantity of hot water at this temperature. Then the energy auditor's task will be to generate that hot water at best efficiency. So that is what I call as demand analysis. And design qualification is again something similar to that, where which is required, because unless it is qualified and somebody is held responsible for that, at times you find in industries that lot of utility, I mean, we come across at so many industries, एक compressor अभी कम पड़ रहा है इसलिए दूसरा लगाया. That's what people say. But we have seen a Japanese company around Pune who consumes around 8 megawatt of electrical energy, had about 10 compressors in the facility and about 350 different machines or points which consume compressed air, and they had a chart given by the Japanese designer that over 24 hours, every hour, machine number 1 to machine number 350, how much compressed air at what pressure it requires. So if you add up them for 24 hours, you will come to know that every hour how much will compressed air will be required to be generated by compressor station. So people do these kind of activities for optimizing energy. So that's why I said design qualification. Now there, the person who had the team which had prepared that chart had taken responsibility that machine A is going to work in hour number 1 only with this much of compressed air. So that's what I mean by design qualification. So these are some of the terms and concepts which you will come across when you actually do energy auditing. TOC is total cost of ownership. that is also equally important, including energy consumption in lifetime. Typically, if you take case of electrical equipment, about 93% of the lifetime costing for electrical equipment is its energy consumption. A 5 HP motor. So when we talk about energy in terms of either electrical or any other form of energy, time integration becomes very important. 500 kilowatt motor, let's say you have in your plant, but you use it only for one hour in 24 hours as per process requirement, then it doesn't contribute much to the total energy consumption of the plant. But if there is a 50 kilowatt motor which runs for 24 hours, then kWh is 50 into 24. So that becomes a major energy guzzler, and then you have to concentrate more on it. So many times this is required. I mean, while doing energy audits, generally the teams come to us that, sir, we have suggested this to our management. Please analyze and tell us that in 50% of the cases, let me tell you, after analysis, we tell them that your payback will be 50 years, not 1 or 2 years. Normally 1 year or 2 year payback is acceptable to management, but people, this H factor is most of the time forgotten. So H is equally important, not only KW, H is also important. So energy requirement in all forms needs to be considered: electricity, gas, coal, water. Most of the time when we first inquiry comes to us, people give us only electrical bill and they say energy. Somehow energy word is attached only to electricity in most of the cases. And when we go into deep, we ask them that you have boiler also, so please tell us. Then it becomes that around 30-35% energy, thermal energy also they use. So conservation in that those areas also is equally important. Material mapping, rejection, wastage, this also comes under energy auditing. I mean, if you come across a company where the manufacturing process is faulty and that is generating a lot of rejection, then any rejected part actually goes out with energy. I mean, a small example I can give you: about 5-6 years back, we had audited one foundry which was manufacturing IC engine cylinders. Now, the die for that was very old, rather done few years before, and afterwards their client had changed the dimensions. So what they used to do is about 100 or 150 piece they used to make, and the new design was requiring only 80 So after finishing, almost at the finishing stage, they used to cut 20 from each job and put it back to furnace. So, and it was going unnoticed. I mean, if you listen to it in this fashion, you will say that it's a very common thing, and anybody should be able to point out that this should not be done. But when we gave them calculations, it was easier for them to analyze. Another example which I can give you, those of you who are electrical might appreciate this. There was a tire manufacturing company having two 25 MVA transformers. They used to work with one working and one standby, and the electrical distribution was not capable of dividing the load into two transformers, and they were not getting budget for arranging that switch gear. So when we calculated transformer loss, people forget that electrical losses are proportional to I square. They say if I reduce the current by half, the loss also will become half. No, it becomes 1/4. So by actually calculating transformer losses, we could tell their management that the switchgear, if you allow these guys to buy, your payback is not even 8 months, and after that you're going to save so much. So immediately that budget was sanctioned. So such things do happen as far as wastage and rejections are concerned. One has to look into them also. Now, energy audit and efficient operation includes two things. One is controlling cost of energy, and another is controlling consumption of energy. So cost of energy reduction also one has to look into it while doing auditing. Source of energy and unit cost, various incentives available, avoiding penalties, quality of. I'll give you a very different example in this case. One of the companies here was using biomass for their boilers, although the soot formation was too high and they were supposed to clean the boilers twice in a month or something like that for using biomass. Then we asked them why you are doing this. They said biodiesel, if you buy today, at least in India, the GST cost plus GST is what you get as a bill. But if you buy fuel in any other form, maybe furnace oil or things like that, then GST is included. You don't pay GST separately on petrol pump, right? So all other petroleum products, their GST is not separate. Whereas if they buy biodiesel, they get so much for the liter plus GST. So that GST they were getting set off through their GST returns, and the fuel cost was getting saved. So this is a very classic example of controlling cost of energy. Similarly, in electrical this thing, certain areas, suppose you are into agricultural development, then your energy cost will be only 2.5 rupees per unit. So if you can get your manufacturing categorized into that area, your energy cost can reduce. And controlling consumption is, depends upon whatever we are discussing and whatever we are going to discuss in next few slides also. So selection of efficient processes, selection of efficient equipment technologies, designing efficient systems, methods adopted for maintaining consistency and efficiency, appropriate monitoring and control, tracking and comparing benchmarks. A small example, again electrical example which I can give you here is, there was a huge large software company, there is rather, they are still existing in Pune, with around say 1200 kilowatt load for IT company, and they had UPS systems, huge large UPS systems working with them. Leaflet of those UPS systems, if you see, the overall efficiency mentioned was about 90 to 93%, but the manufacturer had not mentioned as to how much efficiency they will give if they are operated at 50% load. And unfortunately, when we measured, the efficiency at 50% load was hardly 53%. So we could suggest something to them which they immediately implemented because they were cash rich, and they started saving about 5 lakh rupees per month on electrical energy just by going in for new energy efficient modular kind of UPS systems. So that kind of change is possible at times if a bigger mistake takes place. Controlling cost of electricity is, there are so many things, power factor, load factor and all. Let's not go into details. This slide I think I almost covered in last talking in last slide itself. Energy auditing methodology, what we do is divide energy consumption into utility and process. I explained this a few slides before, that utility is where we can concentrate much as electrical rather energy auditor. And to tell you frankly, on an average, about somewhere between 50 to 70% energy in any organization, any kind of organization, goes on utility, and about 50 to 30% goes into processes depending upon type of industry. So always you will have 50% of energy consumption under your control as the energy auditor, and you can suggest modifications into that. Divide energy consumption into various utilities, locate significant, now this significant energy use and controlling factors affecting significant energy is a fundamental concept behind ISO 50001. So this gives you a tool in your hand. If you really follow this, then immediately your client will see some change in the bill. Of course, if you find something which can be modified, but if you can find significant use, so about say, let's say in industry A, 40% of the energy is consumed by some equipment. And if you say, tell about 15% saving into that, and they implement it, immediately they will find, their bill has reduced. So management is always interested, and management's interest grows if you do something like this. Locate significant energy uses and factors affecting their consumption, and then analyze and tell them what best they can do. Utility equipment use basic electrical, thermal, mechanical principles in their operation, and benchmark efficiencies are known. Compare them and recommend some modifications. Investigations are done to identify discrepancies in energy consumption, if any. Modifications are suggested with required investments and payback. This is a general methodology. I mean, it doesn't only stop at engineering analysis. You are expected to give at least budgetary costs behind modifications and paybacks. Generally, your books of BE examination will talk about so many project engineering and finance concepts about calculating paybacks. But from an engineering person, generally companies expect only simple paybacks. I mean, if you suggest 100 rupees investment, and if you suggest, let's say, 100 units of saving, then they say in how much time my money will come back. So that's a simple payback, and generally accepted paybacks are about 1.5 to 2 years, because business models these days are so fragile. Nobody can predict that if I invest something today, I am going to use it for next 25 years. So that those kind of models are not even accepted in large corporates these days. So about 1 or 2 years payback is generally accepted, and people go ahead. Here I'll just try to share one example. In Mumbai, we about 5-6 years back we had audited a IT company, and we told them that you are consuming about 55% more energy. Now they had occupied a particular floor, half the floor in that building, and they were again a KPO or a BPO type of a thing. So they are working 365 days, 24/7. So it was not possible to modify anything in their system. Obviously, most of the modifications were from either HVAC or UPS. And they said, okay, your findings are correct, we are convinced, but we cannot implement anything here. Can you do one thing? We are going to occupy half of floor in the same building, where we want to create the replica of this setup. I mean, they had occupied about 70,000 square feet on one side, and about 700 people used to work there, and they wanted same setup to be created on the same floor. And they told us that we have contractors for actually interior decoration and HVAC design and all, consultants also, but you act as energy validator. So they gave us obviously our charges for that, and the result was about 43 to 45% energy saving we could achieve just by redesigning. Simple things like, if an interior decorator comes and tells you that you should have your workflow working area outside in the building, and maybe conference rooms in between, it will look nice. He's not considering energy efficiency. If you just reverse this, then your main working area where heat loads are more gets surrounded by an isolated area, and your actual heat loads go down, and you can save on energy consumption. And let's not go into details, but such things are available. We could save about 40 lakhs for them on capex. With whatever they were supposed to buy for air conditioning, that cost went down by about 40 lakhs, and on a recurring basis they saved about 43% of the energy for same kind of a setup. So same, exactly same setup. So such miracles are possible if you look at it in a very innovative way, and then obviously you get recurring benefits also. Investigations are done to identify discrepancies, energy consumption, if any, and modifications are suggested, and paybacks are calculated. Energy auditors are not always process experts. We have discussed this earlier. If process side energy consumption is significant, the team may include process experts. Few years back, we had audited a dairy, and at that time, we had taken a dairy expert also along with us, because he knows much more about his latest developments in dairy equipment and energy saving and all that. So we had included such an expert in our team. So if you find through a walkthrough audit that process consumption is more, you can anytime add a energy expert, process expert into your team. Process modifications can have impact on quality and quantity. This is what I discussed. So you should have an expert to convince your recommendation if you are going to attempt something in process. Discuss and prepare feasibility report for suggested modifications. Ultimately, you have to do that. Prepare cost estimates for required investments and recommend only those modifications which will have noticeable and measurable impact on energy bill. See, before after results, all industries are always interested. So you have to really show that the energy is saved. We'll have simple payback of less than 2 years for volatile business models. Virtually all models are volatile these days. So you cannot, nobody will accept more than 2 years of paybacks. Robust business models may consider 3 to 5 years payback. Various equipments, I think we will rush through them because already I have consumed a lot of time. Electrical distribution, transformer cables, steam, you have boilers, compressor, all these equipment ultimately have use some basic engineering principle and have internal losses while generating respective utility. Typically, whatever comes out, let us take a simple case of, let's say, a pump. Pump output is measured in terms of flow and pressure. So that gives you what is hydraulic power generated by pump, and the electrical input to the motor is actually input to the system. So division of that is efficiency. Normally, it should be somewhere between 70 to 80%. If you come across any figure between 70 to 80%, it is very difficult to suggest modifications. But if you get a efficiency somewhere between 20-23%, you can definitely doubt selection of the pump for that particular application. Something similar happens for all these equipment ultimately when you analyze them. Some standard investigations which we carry out when we do the energy audits is electrical distribution loss, motor efficiencies, motor pump efficiencies, pump selection, compressor fan blower efficiencies, typical specific energy consumptions like kW per CFM, leakage qualification, use of compressed air. All this we normally do. Elimination audit is carried out many times. In large industries, your energy consumption on elimination is also comparatively high. HVAC can be analyzed for kW per TR, indoor air quality, demand analysis, AHU. All these things can be considered. Boilers for direct, indirect efficiencies, condensate recovery, steam system audits can be done. Furnace, ovens can be assessed for energy efficiency of consumed kilocalories or consumed kWh per ton of manufacturing or per pieces, whatever that furnace is doing, depending upon type of furnace. Thermic fluid heaters are also used where higher temperatures are required. I mean, steam can be used around up to 140, 150 degrees. Beyond that, if process requires higher temperatures, then thermic fluids are used. So those heaters also can be analyzed for better efficiencies. Use of VFDs for energy efficiency improvement. This is again a very tricky game, but most of the time we do that and try to convince client into another way. I mean, this is not the application for VFD is what we have to tell him. So for energy saving, if you require variable speed, obviously VFD will have to be used, but energy saving may not come always if you use VFDs. So such analysis also comes under basic investigations. Electrical, we have already seen that 93% is cost in this. Utility parameters requirements of process like voltage, power. I mean, let us skip this slide. There is nothing new in this. Energy required for process equipment. Generally, energy auditors are not process experts. We already discussed this. But for typical process, suppose you come across a steel melting furnace, that fundamentally MCP delta T is what you can use for calculating heat required, and you can measure the heat. And then you can probably map the difference. If you see a sizable difference, then you can map that difference and find out where those losses are. Typical energy auditing books, if you look at and if you have gone through them, you will come to know about a term called Sankey diagram, which asks you to analyze the losses and then reasons for those losses, and then you can optimize them. I mean, we have fought with furnace manufacturers while doing this at so many places for aluminum melting furnaces and steel melting furnaces and all. So that is possible. Energy auditors usually divide plant energy consumption into utility and process using on-site measurements, then divide utility energy consumption into different utilities and then check individual utility equipment for efficiency. Again, dividing, pie charting should lead you to fundamentally, approaching significant use or making a hierarchy. What is the most significant use? What is next to that? And then attack accordingly, so that you will come across a bigger chunk at an earlier time, and client will develop confidence in you. So that's what. Otherwise, if this approach is not followed, people go on the first day, and their reports will talk more about replacing conventional lighting by LEDs, and they might skip few obvious things like pumps and blowers and all, where the lot of energy is being wasted. So some basic hierarchy one has to, if one follows, you can give good results to clients. Various studies conducted. Let us skip this again because it is all common. Okay, so this is what actually I wanted to share. Now